Lisa Curtis, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Lisa, tell me about the moment in Niger when you first discovered Moringa. What was going through your mind when the local women introduced you to this plant?
Yeah, so if you can envision, I was in my Peace Corps village, which was very rural, small village, like 10 hours outside of the capital. And I had been in that village for a couple months and felt like I wasn't getting the right nutrients in my diet. So I'm a vegetarian and, in that area, there just wasn't a ton of healthy food. So I was eating like basically like rice and pasta. And no greens and not a lot of protein. And so I went to some of the women in my village's health center and said, what can I eat to give me more energy? I'm just feeling so tired, lethargic. And they literally pulled these leaves off a tree and mixed them into a popular local snack called Kuli Kuli and said, eat this every day, it'll make you feel better. And I was like, what is this? Like tree leaves? Like it sounded a little weird, but I, trusted these women and I was like, I'll take anything to make me feel better. And so I did. I started eating this Kuli Kuli Moringa mix every day and it really had the most transformative impact on my health of anything I've ever tried. So I then went back to them and I was like, what is moringa? Tell me more. And through those conversations, really learned that moringa is an incredible tree, grows all over the tropics, is super nutritious, and a lot of people find that it gives them all the nutrients they need to feel more energized without caffeine. So I was hooked and wanted to find a way to support these women to be able to sell some moringa in the US and support their communities.
So at the time, this is 2011, right? You were 22 years old. I imagine right out of college, but probably e-commerce entrepreneurship may not have been top of mind.
Yeah, I very much in Peace Corps went into I'm interested in international development. I'm interested in learning about other countries and other cultures. I'm interested in like doing something good for the world. And it just ended up being, a conversation where these women are like basically saying, well, we're not going to grow moringa unless we have a market. Can you help us create a market? Can you help us sell this in the US? And I was like, okay, like, yeah, no problem, not, I think the like naivete of youth was actually beneficial because if I had any idea that I was signing up for what has now become an over 10-year journey, I don't know that I would have signed up.
Oh, I'm going to ask you about this later in the conversation, but let's continue around the same time. So they told you they need a market. So it sounds like they were just kind of using it themselves, not selling it at the time.
So often what you would find is Moringa had a reputation, similar reputation to what like kale had in the US over 10 years ago. So, a lot of people don't know this, but like kale, the largest purchaser of kale in the US actually used to be Pizza Hut. And they weren't putting it on the pizza. They were using it as garnish for the salad bars. So just like to make them look pretty and green. And similarly, Moringa had this sort of like stereotype similar to kale of being this like bitter green. It grows like a weed. It's something you like eat if you have to, if you have nothing else. Otherwise, you're feeding it to your goats. So not a lot of people were eating it, although, the women in my health center knew of it as like a super nutritious plant. Not a lot of folks were totally aware. And so that was one of my big questions of like, well, how do we get more people locally to eat it? And they're like, we're not growing a crop we can't sell. So that's kind of where became like, oh, we got to really cultivate a market for this.
Okay, so what did you do next? You came back to the US and then did what?
Yeah, so I came back to the US, moved in with my parents because I didn't have a job right away. And then tried to figure out how to start this company. And, the first thing I did was actually get a job because I didn't want to live with my parents forever. So I got a job at a startup, which was in a totally unrelated field. I was a clean energy startup, but was very helpful in the sense that I was like the fifth person to join the company. The company ended up, becoming like 50 people and over 5 million in revenue by the time I left. So I saw like, what crazy growth could look like, and was really helping and supporting on all the fundraising and those aspects. So I kind of learned on someone else's dime. And in, nights, weekends, every time I could get, I was working on Kuli Kuli in the background.
When you say you were working on Kuli Kuli in the background, what exactly were you doing? So you
Yeah.
promised these ladies something. Did you promise them, or did you say, let me see what I can do? Or did you say that we're going to do it for sure?
No, no, I was full of optimism, 22 years old. I was like, yeah, no problem. I'll help you sell this in the US. Um, so definitely made a strong promise, which I have followed up. Took a little while though. But yeah, the first thing I did was really just try to figure out like, how do I import Moringa to the US? Like kind of getting through all the FDA processes, figuring out the shipping, all of that was kind of a lot of work in and of itself. Then I was trying to figure out, well, who can I get to do this with me? I didn't want to be a solo founder. I really wanted to have other people to collaborate with. So I tapped into my network. I found somebody who, one of my childhood best friends who had been working in consumer packaged good innovation, pulled her in. Another friend who had been working a lot in tech startups, knew a lot about startups, pulled him in. If he knew somebody who was really great at like graphic design for food brands in particular, we pulled her in. So got this little team together. All of us had day jobs. This was like we would meet every Wednesday night. It was like our thing. And yeah, we started to plan out like, okay, let's get it here. What sort of product can we put it in? And how do we really test this idea? I think, I was full of optimism, but also skepticism and wanted to ensure that before I quit my day job and asked other people to quit their day jobs, that we had a product that could actually sell.
Yeah. So your path is what I call the American gangster movie. Denzel Washington goes, you know what I'm talking about. Have you seen the movie? He cuts out the
Yeah.
middleman, directly goes to the farmers, even though it's unsavory business in that case. But so you're in the American gangster path here, direct relationship with the farmers, no middleman. But you're now
Yeah.
figuring out imports, right?
Now figuring out imports and then figuring out like, will Americans actually buy this, right? Because like nobody had heard of Moringa 10 years ago. It's become more familiar. Still, a lot of people hadn't heard of it. And so we spent a bunch of time in a commercial kitchen using Moringa powder in different recipes, trying to figure out, okay, what can we put it in that like people will like, people will understand. Ended up deciding on bars. I'm sad to say this year we just discontinued bars. So you gotta, sometimes the product you launch isn't the product you stay with.
Bars like
Um,
what kind of bars?
the nutrition bars.
Oh, nutrition bars, like
Hmm.
protein bars. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we were originally trying to kind of replicate that Kuli Kuli snack that they gave me, which was like a sort of peanut spice moringa blend. Um, and it evolved kind of over time and adjusting to the American palate. We ended up making a little bit more of like a date sort of sweeter blend. But then we went to farmers markets and started testing. And we were very diligent about every person who came by. We did a little survey on of like, what did they try? What did they like? What did they not like? What were their rough demographics? Like, they male, females, they have kids with them, approximate age. And from that, we were able to survey over 500 customers. We were able to get a sense of our conversion rate from sampling to sale. And we were able to get a lot of direct feedback about what people liked and didn't like, which was super helpful.
This American palate angle is so interesting. I've had several conversations with founders who brought something from elsewhere, and now they have to think about like how can this be used in the American market. In your case, it's this exotic ingredient, like nobody really heard of. You're kind of almost introducing it to the market in a sense, I guess. Like definitely mass market doesn't know about it. I don't know who knows about it. I hadn't heard of it. My wife knew about it. She's like, "Oh yeah, I know Moringa." I'm like, "What is like? I've never heard of it in my life. Like, how do you know about it? Where did you hear about it?" So but so the farmers market is interesting, right? So I've heard the farmers market path from multiple entrepreneurs where you kind of experiment in your kitchen and then go test it in the farmers market. So I think, let's dig into that a little bit. It's very relevant for any type of beginner entrepreneurs who have some kind of ingredient. They just want to make something and then test palate testing, right? Farmers
Hmm.
market seems to be like a really good way to do this. What's the game plan there?
Yeah, so I think the important part, like if your goal is similar to ours, which our goal was not to sell at the farmers markets forever. Because if you can imagine, like we all had day jobs. All day Saturday, we were in a commercial kitchen making the product by hand. All day Sunday, we were at a farmer's market selling it. It was totally exhausting, and nobody was getting paid anything from Kuli Kuli at the time. We had no money. So we were very clear that this needed to be a test, and we needed to have kind of like a go, no go on like, is this product going to work? Is this business going to work? And, what do people like or not like about it? And how do we adjust the product to be the best possible product? So we're very intentional about just making sure we really were doing consumer research and not just selling product. And I think sometimes that's where I see founders get tripped up where they're like, okay, well, let me start in a farmer's market. It's like, yeah, start in a farmer's market. But if your goal is to not sell in a farmer's market forever, like be intentional about it. Think of it as a research opportunity as opposed to like, I'm just going to sell at a farmer's market until somebody discovers me and then, I'll go sell somewhere else. So we collected, like I said, over 500 surveys, tons of data, and we were able to then take that data to our local Whole Foods, Northern California, and say, like, look, this is the demographic that purchases our product. This really aligns with who buys Whole Foods products. We think there's nothing like this in your set. You really need it. And the buyer said yes. So
Wow.
it was actually pretty incredible. It was also sort of funny because she said yes, and I just assumed like, great, we're in all 50 stores in Northern California. But no, she said yes to authorize us in all of those stores. So then my very glamorous job became driving to every single Whole Foods store in Northern California, literally selling in the bars carton by carton. Um, yeah, it was quite a process.
So um, let's just rewind a little bit to the farmers market. So did you say 500? Did you test it with like 500 people? And there was the bars. And did you also have the powder and the gummies back then, or was it just the bars at the
No,
time?
no. So the bars had the Moringa powder in them. So they're
Hmm.
sort of
Oh, yeah.
Moringa energy bars. And that was the first product we launched.
Hmm.
And so that was the product we were testing.
So let's say if somebody comes up in a farmer's market, you only have a few seconds to make an impression. Obviously, they won't be able to feel anything. It just has to be a taste-based first reaction, right?
Yeah, taste and benefits based. I think the thing that I realized is like at the beginning, I was pitching the like, oh, supports like women in Africa, like helps plant trees, like is good for the world. And
Do people care
no,
about that?
no, not
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the funny thing is like people care in the sense that they'll like stand there and listen to you and ask questions and like be really engaged, and then they'll walk away and like not buy a single thing. And so I sort of realized like, no, we need to be really pitching like, what is the benefit of this for you? And so we really got into like Moringa is more nutritious than kale. It delivers caffeine-free energy. It supports digestion and detoxification, and you can get, half a cup of green Moringa greens in this single bar. This is loaded with great nutrition. And that started to work. And so that gave us a really clear idea of what to put on our packaging.
So you were testing copy in person, basically.
Yeah, testing coffee in person.
And let's go back to the buyer who said yes from Whole Foods. How did you get in touch with the person? Were you emailing? Was there a warm intro? Did you just walk into one of the Whole Foods and say that, hey, I'm Lisa Curtis. I have Moringa bars. Where's the buyer? Show me the buyer.
Yeah, I mean, it was a bit of all of the above. We were trying to find out, who were online grocery store or like, how we could get in touch with grocery stores. We ended up having somebody who shopped at the farmer's market worked for Whole Foods, and she wasn't like the buyer or anyone, but she was like, "Hey, you should check out this program. We have a forager program. This could be a great way for you to get into Whole Foods." And so then I like, went to the website, found all the paperwork to submit, and that's when we then got to this Whole Foods forager, and then he introduced us to the buyer.
Well, so it just shows you that, that the importance of putting yourself out there. Single, ready to mingle. I have a bar. Oh, by the way, somebody was just there from Whole Foods. How would you have ever
Oh,
met that person if you were just like testing it from your computer?
exactly. Yeah, I think getting out, shouting your idea to the world is so key.
Yeah. So, aside from the Whole Foods, were you also trying to do like other maybe specialty boutique type retail stores, or what was your plan about online sales at the time?
Yeah, so we were trying everything. We were sort of like throwing spaghetti at the wall and like seeing what sticks. So we built a website, we were offering them from sale on our website, like shipping out packages by hand. We were also trying to get into other small specialty stores. I think the thing that is important to understand about the food industry is generally you need a distributor because most stores aren't going to let you just like drive up in your car and deliver product. Most of what they receive comes in through like a food distributor. So there's a couple big ones, UNFI, KeHE. There's also some smaller ones. And so we needed to get enough stores committed so that we were worth bringing in like a distributor. It made sense for a distributor to allocate warehouse space. So that's why it was huge when we got Whole Foods to say, we were authorized. First, I focused on getting as many Whole Foods stores as possible. And then we hired a broker then and a distributor, and we were able to start building out all of Northern California. And then went to Southern California, then went to the Pacific Northwest, then went to the Midwest, and then sort of slowly made our way nationwide.
Hmm. The distributor part of it is interesting. I didn't know about that. So let's say, like where I live, there's like a really cool little shop owned by a husband-wife couple. They have like these really interesting bits and pieces of products. It's very small, but it's cool and different. And you don't get that in any of the other, even Whole Foods or other places. So if I went to them right now and said, oh, like my friend has this Moringa thing, what will they tell me? They're like, oh, no, no, you have to call our distributor.
I mean, I think they would likely say, who are they distributed by?
Hmm.
Um, like they probably have like one to two distributors that they order from, which is where most of their product is coming from. So, yeah, that would be the
Hmm.
way to ask.
Well, what if I said it's brand new, it's not distributed by anything? Uh, can I give you a sample? And if they like it, maybe they let their distributor know. Is that how it will work?
Yeah, that's definitely how it would work. But for a distributor, they're not going to bring you in their warehouse if you're only in one store.
Oh, I
So
see.
generally, you have to get at least like 20 stores or more
Wow.
committed to bring in the product before they'll actually bring it in.
Well, that sounds like a lot of work. 20,
It's
you
a lot of
know?
work. It's a lot of work. Well, and that's where it's helpful if you can find like a local chain or somebody that has a little bit more pull with some of the distributors, then it can be a little bit easier to get in.
Hmm. And so you drove to 50 Whole Foods in Northern California.
Yeah, I
How
went
many of
everywhere
them
from
said yes? How many of them said maybe? How many of them said no?
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing is like showing up in person, basically saying, hey, this is already authorized. I just need you to cut it in. I'm gonna stand here and like do a demo and pass out samples and like make sure this really sells. Um, People were pretty open. So I'd say the majority said yes.
But, there's nothing for them to lose, right? You just have to do samples. And uh, is there somebody from the store monitoring how well the samples are doing? And based on the response, maybe they'll say yes or no to kind of carrying it? Or is there like a camera counting how many samples are going through? Or what is it?
Not a camera. Generally, I would say depends a bit on the store, but like for Whole Foods in particular, it's like the buyer made the decision to authorize it, so it's already in their system. So all they have to do is order it.
Hmm.
And so, if they order it, generally they will reorder it if they like put the tags on the shelf. The key is to get the tags on the shelf.
Hmm. And what were your biggest learnings at the time, Lisa? So I imagine, like, we didn't really touch on it that much, but I'd like to touch on it. What is it like to introduce a brand new unknown thing, exotic ingredient from an exotic country to Americans who don't really care about anything international? I remember this
Yeah, yeah,
comedian.
and add to
Yeah.
that, it's like a really earthy green flavor. It's like very strong. It's not like we're selling chocolate. It's like, you don't eat moringa for the benefits or for the taste. You eat it for the benefits. You eat it for like what it does for your body. Um, so it was really hard. I think we
Mhm.
had a lot of people who were like, "Oh, what is this green thing?" But then there were, some people that like, "Oh, this sounds really cool, like more nutritious than kale. Oh, energy without caffeine. Like I could use that." And certainly we found if we could get them to actually like try, like if we could get them to purchase once, often they would purchase again. But it was getting over that first hurdle of like, I don't know anything about this. I've never heard of moringa. I've never heard of Kuli Kuli. I don't think I'm gonna buy it. That was the hard part.
Mm. Uh, whose idea was it to come up with the more nutritious than kale? It feels like a strong point right there. It's like kale, everybody kind of knows and it's popular, but more nutritious. Ooh.
Yeah, that was, I don't know. I think it was, kind of collectively me and my co-founders who I pulled in to like, do these farmers markets and do this testing. We were sort of just like researching and trying a bunch of different things to get people to come to our booth and try the product. So it was like sort of like live improvising. And, when you heard something that worked, you would start saying it more. And then you'd be like, hey, everybody, let's try this line. Um, so I don't know that there was one genius. Probably
Hmm.
wasn't me, but um, it definitely was something that stuck. And we even actually got a whole NPR article about like Moringa, is this the new kale? And then we got in Time magazine with like the same thing. So that was really cool when that idea started to take off and we started to get some great press behind it.
How did the idea start taking off? I wanted to ask you about what were some of your early day marketing strategies that started kind of connecting and moving the needle?
Yeah, so I would say my for a while, like I quit my day job in 2013 and then really focused all of my time and effort into this. And I was trying to kind of divide my day into thirds. It was like sales, marketing, fundraising. Um, and even better when you can tie all those things together. So one of the first things we did was a crowdfunding campaign through Indiegogo, really to be able to do our first big manufacturing run, and be able to produce these bars not in a commercial kitchen, not by hand, but actually in a co-packer. So that was uh, that was a great way to get the awareness out. We ended up getting a lot of publicity around that. The crowdfunding campaign did really well. Um, and then I would say from there, it was a lot of just like grunt work, like sampling in stores, sampling at events, like just like trying to kind of build up our local presence and really focusing on Northern California and the Bay Area is like the place to build the brand.
Hmm. Looks like the one third in the later part of the day dedicated to fundraising worked out quite well. Also, did you raise over $10 million from some impressive
Yeah,
investors?
yeah, we raised about 11 and a half, a bit more if you count our debt as well. Um, but yeah, I started fundraising very early because coming into this from the Peace Corps, I had like $2,000 in my bank account. It wasn't like a ton of money that I owned that I could personally put into this. I really needed other people's money to make it work. So I ended up just going to every networking event I could find, pitching, and meeting people and following up. I think, one of the things I found over time is a lot of people just don't follow up. And it's so key. Like everyone you meet every potential like advisor, investor, connection bringer, like you just got to follow up. So I always made a point to, like, after I met somebody, sending them a quick note saying thanks for meeting, love to keep in touch, and then like actually keeping in touch. So I did start to build a list of like potential investors, and then just really every quarter sending them like, here's what we're doing, here's all the news articles, here's the new stores, and so like scraped together from that $500,000. It took a long time. But then we got the news in 2016 or 2015 that Whole Foods wanted to launch us nationwide in 2016. And so that was kind of a pivotal moment where I was able to, reach back out to all those people and say like, hey, I know you've been watching us. We have this huge milestone. Like, this is going to transform our brand. It's going to like triple our business. Are you interested in being a part of this growth? And that was so interesting because it'd taken me almost a year to raise $500,000 before. And then I raised like $500,000 in 3 months just because I had such a clear milestone and such a clear use of funds.
Mm-hmm. So, did your earlier clean energy startup experience kind of help with this? Because Northern California, Silicon Valley, tech startups, lots of VC money, but that VC money is usually for technology companies. Was it kind of the same VCs also making side investments, or was it like a completely different type of investor profile?
Yes, totally different in the sense that like I didn't have a network in this space. So I think I got a lot of the fundamentals of like, here's how you build a pitch deck, like here's how you raise a round, here's how you talk to investors, here's kind of like the due diligence process, because I had done all of that at Mosaic, the clean energy startup, but I hadn't done it with the same people. So really, I mean, for many, many years, I like went to every networking event I could find, like everything. I just said yes to everything. So I would have like multiple events per week, just, exhausting, but like, and in the end kind of paid off because I started to develop my own network pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. And Lisa, over time, I remember seeing, obviously getting into 11,000 stores nationwide. That's like a really big deal. There was a Jose Andres collab. Can you tell us a bit
Yeah.
about that? How did that come about? That guy's awesome.
Yes.
I love him.
Yeah, I know. He's so cool. I love him too. So that was really amazing where we got contacted by the Clinton Foundation because they were looking for a way to decrease deforestation in Haiti. So to, plant more trees. And they specifically wanted to plant more trees that would grow fast and that would provide income to the farmers so that those trees were valuable enough that they would stay trees and not get cut down and like used as firewood. And so that's where they had identified Moringa. And then they came to us, this 2-year-old brand as the Moringa expert and said, hey, we're interested in partnering with you. Would you consider using Haitian Moringa in your products? And, we said, this sounds really cool. Right now, all of our moringa is coming from Ghana. That's kind of like where a lot of our messaging and our brand has been. But why don't we work with you to develop a new product? So we worked with them. And then Jose Andres, who, as you know, has a nonprofit, World Central Kitchen, which is very involved in Haiti. He got involved through the World Central Kitchen. Then we also got Whole Foods Market, like the global team involved because, the Clintons and Jose Andres. So like they were kind of like down to join the party. And then we raised $100,000 through another crowdfunding campaign to launch this new product nationwide with Whole Foods. That was a energy shot made with Haitian Moringa.
That's amazing. Speaking of collabs, for the creator influencers who are watching and listening, what do you look for when you're doing collaborations with creators?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for us is mission alignment. So we are very much a sustainability and wellness focused company. So we want to find collaborators who are like similarly in that vein and who resonate with our audience and will resonate with theirs. And then we look for creativity too, because I think the fun thing about our product is a lot of them are powders. And so we have, the pure moringa powder, which a lot of people use in smoothies, but you can also make like amazing muffins and cookies that taste almost like matcha like, but even healthier, and lots of cool things like that. So it's really fun to collaborate with people who, like me, are kind of like superfood explorers, and they like experimenting with different things and trying to, get the best possible product for themselves and their families.
Lisa, earlier in our conversation, you said something. I promised I was going to revisit that, and this is that time. 13 years into your entrepreneurship journey, knowing everything you know now, if you wanted to start a brand new company from scratch, in any category, what category would you pick?
Oof, brand new category from scratch. You know, it has sort of become my deep focus of interest of finding climate smart, incredibly nutritious ingredients that are used elsewhere in the world and aren't used in the US, and helping them come to the US. So both through Kuli Kuli and through like a lot of brands that I mentor and support, I just think there's so many amazing plants out there, and we use so few of them. They say like the average pantry has like 30 different varieties of plants out of the like 30,000 that exist, edible plants that exist. So there's a lot that more that we can do, and I think I would love, if I was to start another company, I think it would still be in this like uniquely nutritious, good for the world
Uh,
superfood space.
that's interesting. I thought you were going to say something else. It seemed like, because I feel like, as a second time entrepreneur myself, sometimes you get beaten down so much that you kind
Mm.
of want to go in a different direction. That, one of the founders I talked to, she had a, tech background. She started in, DTC company in women's health. And her answer to this question was she would go back to starting something in like software, tech company.
I
So,
mean, that's
yeah,
my other default answer when I'm like really frustrated. Is like, oh, I just want to start a SaaS business.
yeah,
I get a great valuation. I can raise a ton of money. I just have to have like a couple engineers in a room. Like, I don't have to deal with like cogs and shipping and all of these things. So absolutely, from a like, pure, I want to make money and I want my life to be easier. SaaS business for sure. But from a like what I think my purpose is and like what lights me up and what'll keep me working, I think I'm more interested in like what's good for the world.
yeah. Plus, maybe that answer would have been exciting last year or maybe even 6 months ago, but now AI is building all the SaaS, so SaaS is dead. So there's no need for any
It's true.
software
It's true. It's
that you
true.
could just
Yeah,
tell
yeah.
it to
I
build it.
mean, the better answer is like I'm going to start an AI anything, right? Like,
Final question, Lisa. Top two problems giving you a headache right now, and top two priorities you're excited about for the year and next year.
yeah. So my priorities and my problems are actually very related. Kuli Kuli is in this crazy moment where we are changing our entire brand. So if you go to our website today, you will notice that we launched some brand new superfood lattes, which are amazing, but the packaging looks really different than the packaging we've currently had. And we're about to change all of our other packaging. Every branded material we own is going to be in this new brand, which the new brand is really to kind of call out this idea that we're not just a Moringa company, we're a climate smart superfood company. We're doing, lots of products that don't even have Moringa in them, that have like other sustainably sourced ingredients. And so we're trying to bring that forward, but it is such a pain in the butt from a manufacturing perspective because we are reprinting everything. And then, from a other priority slash problem, we are about to like double in size next year. So we are
Wow.
launching nationwide with Whole Foods in January with our lattes and our Marine Glow. Then we are launching with Kroger. Then we're launching with Target. Then we're launching with Walmart. So it's going to be an insane Q1 and Q2, which is amazing. And my biggest headache right now is like that requires a ton of cash in inventory. We're just like spending every dollar we have holding product and making product. And so we have been in a lot of conversations with a lot of different lenders to figure out how to be able to do that.
Well, this is what I call a yacht problem, where you're launching in. I mean, I heard this like a couple of years ago, and I keep going back at it. This is when we're drinking our champagnes on the yacht, discussing the problems about scaling and how getting fast, growing so fast. You know, so now you can go to investors and say, "I need money because we're going to launch in all of these Whole Foods, except I need money to develop the product." You know, that's like a whole different type of money ask.
For sure. And I keep reminding myself these are champagne problems. And I think my operations team keeps coming back to them and they're like, yes, they're champagne problems, but we are drowning in champagne.
I love that. So does that mean most of the 2025 focus is going to be on retail and not so much on e-commerce online?
Yeah, I mean, we still do a fair amount on e-commerce, but it is a much smaller percent of our business. We have really from the beginning, like we've always had a website, we've always had a bit of an Amazon presence. You know, our Amazon is now pretty big for us, but still 80% of our business is brick and mortar retail.
This is so interesting. You know, like when I ask founders this question, maybe more than 80% of them focus on, and they're all e-commerce businesses, every single one of them. They just retail is like one of the two priorities that I ask about. And then why do you think that is?
Why are so many D2C brands focused on retail right
Yeah,
now?
like especially, or is it just me? Am I
No,
observing
you're
something that
right.
was
I
always
mean,
there, or is it a new thing?
no, it's new. It's new.
Okay.
I mean, I think the iOS change made it really hard for D2C brands to actually make money because their ads couldn't like track people as closely. And then a lot of them have found that they've kind of like, hit a wall with VCs who are no longer willing to like fund unprofitable growth. And so they need to pull back and really be profitable. And I'm not saying retail is easy to be profitable. Let me be clear. It's still very hard. But I think it's hard to buy exponential growth on D2C and be profitable. I think
Gotcha.
with retail, you can get some real economies of scale, especially when you start working with really big retailers.
Gosh, everything is so hard.
It's a bit of a hard moment. Like I think for a lot of businesses, it's yeah, it's a bit challenging. I
But
think a lot of
congratulations on an
Americans are,
amazing.
feeling a little squeezed. So it means that they aren't necessarily buying as much, particularly from like new and innovative brands.
But looks like you have an incredible year coming up for you. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. We got to pull it off. We got to make everything go well. But yes, it is exciting. We've had a lot of ups and downs. COVID knocked out half my business. Like we've had like so many things that have happened where we've been like, is this our end right here? And thankfully we've sort of like persevered through, and now are experiencing some really nice growth. I kind of tell everyone, I'm like, yeah, we're like a 10-year overnight success.
Lisa Curtis, thank you for joining me and sharing your journey with me.
Thank you for having me.